Thank you, thank you. It's so great to be here in person. 2 years in the waiting for it to be on this stage. But the only problem, of course, is I was backstage looking everywhere for the touch-up appearance feature, and it was nowhere to be found. Startup Genome has been the publisher of record for the global startup revolution for 10 years now. But what we do mostly is actually take the wealth of data that we collect through our global research, bringing together all the startup databases to advise governments, private and public innovation agencies on how to do policies that actually work. And learning from them so that we can achieve our mission to grow startup ecosystems faster all over the world. So every city, every country captures its fair share of the new economy, because nowadays, startup ecosystem is the #1 engine of job creation and economic growth. We have clients all over the world. We've worked with 125 governments and agencies over the last few years across more than 60 countries. And about 10 years ago, we started the research with Steve Blank and professors from Berkeley and Stanford universities. And we're a group of serial entrepreneurs. We published the success factors, the first and still the only data-driven research on success factors. You can see it on our website still today. And the failure factors, you've probably heard of premature scaling. You've probably heard of the discovery and the validation stages of a process of a startup. These are startup genome research terminologies. But after publishing on this, we realized that the success factors that are outside of your control as a startup founder are even more important than those you control. And that was the birth 10 years ago of the first startup ecosystem report. First time that we brought together data on one city, because this is where innovation happens. And so I'm very proud today to launch the 10-year anniversary GSER 2022. And we'll go over a few of the insights of what happened this year. Such a really different year from all the ones before, the last 20, 30 years of the global startup revolution after COVID. And at the top 20, we've seen a lot more movement than usual. At the top 4, Boston took the place of Beijing, and we've seen Seoul go up 6 ranks, which is unheard of, to join the top 10. Really well done, Seoul. And then on the 11 to 20, we've seen Tokyo slip out of the top 10, and San Diego, Berlin, and Sydney going up really fast, 8, 6, and 4 ranks, so that we can welcome Sydney back to the top 20 where it was 10 years ago. A bit about key findings, starting with London, of course, more than 400% growth in exit value. This is unheard of. 50% more exits of 50 million plus, Series B increased, and so late-stage funding, 160% growth. These are numbers that I've never seen, and we see it across all of the world. It's incredible. India has seen the most incredible explosion. Their top ecosystem went up, I think, on average, 6 ranks, with Delhi going up 11 places to 26, Bangalore going back towards the top 20 at 22. On average, US ecosystem went up almost 1 rank, and European startup ecosystem gone up almost 2 ranks. China, up 1 rank on average. And so you can see by continent, it's been really different, and we'll see why later. But 2 big mentions before that. Helsinki, incredible, going up 20 places to number 35. And Brazil, the exit value went up from $1 billion to $49 billion in 1 year. That's never happened before. And it's multiple exits that made that. And the result is that the global startup revolution, the ecosystem value, is now $6.4 trillion. And that's mind-boggling. 2 years ago, it was 3.8 trillion. Really incredible growth. And it's bigger than the GDP of most G7 economies. And that's the sum of all the startup valuation of funding rounds of the last 30 months and all the recent exits. So the global startup revolution, as you know here, we're disrupting industry after industry. And it's been growing about 10% a year for the last 10 years. And now this last year, the last 2 years on average, gone up 35%, 3.5 times faster. Mind-boggling. And now the tech industry, not just the startups, is now accounts for 6%, more than 6% of the global economy. And that's without life sciences that has its own 10%. So it's easy to see, and we've been saying it for a few years, within 20 years, maybe faster than that, tech is going to be the largest single sector of the global economy. And that's why it's important to learn from each other so we can decentralize this force that is tech startup ecosystems. So it serves every society with jobs and economic growth. And we have good news. Every year, we see decentralization happen more and more. Now, the top 10 ecosystems capture only 63% of the exit value. It's still concentrated, but it's good news because 10 years ago, it was 87%. So we're going in the right direction. But still, it's way too concentrated. This is the distribution of exit value. And when I did this chart in 2015, my jaw dropped, and I said, we need to help. We need to help flatten this curve. So it's our mission, all of us, to share knowledge. How do we create more startups? How do we create more startup success? Because Silicon Valley, Beijing, New York, London is way too high. And this is 100 cities. So everybody else is on the flat part over here. Since the pandemic, tech grew 2.3 times faster than non-tech on the S&P. North America still dominates, but big change. Asia passed Europe in the top 30. How many cities are in the top 30? So you can see Asia has been investing a lot. And first it was China, but now Seoul, Tokyo, everybody is joining. Singapore has been there for a while. But what I celebrate is outside of the top 30, we've seen 113 city ecosystems create at least one unicorn. And that's a great news because when you create a unicorn, suddenly you have a bunch of talent in marketing, in sales, in technology, in operations, in customer service, learning how to scale a tech business at 10x the speed of traditional companies. And they develop a global business network. And later, this talent goes to startups and starts spreading those skills. And so that's why it's such a good news to see more cities being able to create $1 billion startup. Last year, there was an explosion in unicorns, right? It seems like this is a normal thing to do. 540 unicorns were created. And as I said, India's growth has been phenomenal. And we did something, looking at the last 10 years since our first report, we did an index of the exits for China and India, placing it at 100 10 years ago. And India has been trailing for 9 years. And then suddenly, the index shot past China in a big way. And that's amazing. But the biggest theme of the last few years is the rise of deep tech. So about 4 or 5 years ago, we started breaking down tech into verticals and horizontals and started realizing that most of the growth of startup ecosystems were due to the rise of deep tech. That means tangible innovation, startup innovation that is based on tangible IP. And you can see the share of deep tech has been rising because of that to now more than 40% of funding deals are to deep tech startups. And when you look at the map of funding growth over the last 5 years and exit growth, you can see that deep tech, AI, blockchain, advanced manufacturing, robotics, you could add clean tech, life sciences. You see they have all of the spots on the fastest funding growth of the last 5 years. Exit's a lagging indicator, so a little bit different, but you see where it's going. AI is now a core element of 23% of startups, including life sciences. And so it's been rising rapidly. And finally, I want to leave, of course, on the note about inflation. We've all seen this, and we see a big correction right now, right? Funding valuation and exit valuation have gone up 50% when you divide valuation divided by revenue, and that should be pretty stable, right? Revenue multiple. and it went up, on average globally, 50% exit valuation. US is even higher than that. Europe is even higher than that. And when we look at late-stage funding, Series B+, we see the same thing. 50% average inflation, US even more, Europe even more. And so, of course, we all see a correction happening, but not to worry. I'm sure that by 2023, 2024, when we look back 5 years to pre-COVID, we're certainly going to find that tech startup ecosystems are keeping the pace, growing 10% a year, which is 3 to 4 times faster than the rest of our economies. Thank you so much. Great to be here.